They said Rome had seen madness before, emperors drunk on wine, power, and blood, but none like him. None like Gaius, Caesar Augustus, Germanicus, the man history remembers only by one name, Caligula. To some, he was a god. To others, a monster wearing a crown of laurel and gold. But to Rome, he was the whisper that turned into a scream, the promise of glory that decayed into horror, and it all began with a smile. The birth of madness. Gaius was born into chaos. His father, the legendary Germanicus, was beloved by the people, a hero whose victories in Germania had carved songs into Roman hearts. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, was noble, proud, and dangerously outspoken. The empire adored them, and that adoration terrified the emperor of the time, Tiberius. When Germanicus died under mysterious circumstances, perhaps poisoned, Agrippina accused Tiberius himself. It was then that young Gaius saw his first glimpse of what Rome truly was, not marble and glory, but betrayal and blood behind every smile. He learned early that power in Rome was not inherited. It was taken by charm, by deception, or by fear. The boy who would be emperor was raised among soldiers, earning the affectionate nickname Caligula, meaning little boots, for the tiny military sandals he wore while following his father's legions. But beneath that innocent name, something darker stirred. A child who watched his family destroyed by envy. A soul forged in paranoia and revenge. When Tiberius called him to Capri in his late teens, Rome knew the island as a place of exile and nightmares. Those who displeased the emperor vanished there and never returned. Yet Gaius returned alive, and that, perhaps, was the first miracle of his reign. The mask of kindness. When Tiberius finally died, the empire exhaled. Caligula was named emperor at 20. Rome erupted in joy. The people flooded the streets, crying his name as if salvation itself had taken the throne. He was young, handsome, and the grandson of Augustus by blood. To the Senate, he was a chance to restore harmony after years of fear. At first, he played the role perfectly. He granted amnesty to prisoners, restored exiled families, and honored his late mother and brothers with public ceremonies. Coins were struck with his smiling face, hope reborn in the eyes of the people. For a moment, the empire believed, but in Rome, hope is always short-lived. Only months into his rule, Caligula fell gravely ill. The empire held its breath as its young emperor hovered between life and death. When he recovered, the man who rose from his bed was not the same. Something in him had fractured. The transformation, the illness left him hollow-eyed and feverish, speaking of visions and divine voices. He began to believe, or at least to claim, that he was chosen by the gods not to rule Rome, but to become Rome itself. He would often gaze at his reflection and whisper, "I am all things. I am the moon, the sun, and the storm that follows." Those closest to him began to fear that the sickness had twisted more than his body, it had poisoned his mind. Soon after, the executions began. Friends, advisors, even loyal guards, those who had once praised him, found themselves accused of conspiracy. The Senate, once his ally, now trembled in silence. Every glance, every whisper, every uncertain pause was treason. Caligula had learned from Tiberius well. Fear was the truest form of loyalty. Rome's golden nightmare, yet, amid his cruelty, there was splendor. Caligula turned Rome into a theater of decadence. The banquets of his palace became legendary lavish feasts that stretched till dawn, where wine flowed like rivers and music drowned the quiet gasps of unease. The people watched, half in awe, half in terror, as their emperor demanded to be worshipped as a living god. Temples once built for Jupiter now bore statues of Caligula himself. Priests bowed before his image. Sacrifices were made in his name, and when someone hesitated, he would smile and say, "Am I not greater than any god carved in stone? I can bleed, and I can make you bleed." He ordered new bridges, towers, and monuments projects so vast they drained the treasury in months. The empire bled gold while the emperor bathed in it. But behind every feast, behind every shimmering wall of marble, the whispers grew louder. Rome was afraid. The Senate, humiliated and powerless, plotted in shadows. Divine delusion Caligula's delusion deepened. He began to believe that the gods themselves were his rivals. One night, he walked into the temple of Jupiter and ordered the statue's head removed and replaced with his own likeness. To him, this was not blasphemy, it was justice. "How long will Rome kneel before a ghost in the sky?" he said. "When a living god stands before them." He spoke of conquering the sea, of waging war, not against nations, but against nature itself. Once, he commanded his legions to march to the shore of Gaul, line up on the sand, and collect seashells, declaring them spoils from the ocean. To the soldiers, it was madness. To Caligula, it was triumph. He had conquered Neptune, the theater of fear, by now. His cruelty was performance, his court, a stage of terror. He summoned senators to lavish dinners, only to mock them publicly, forcing them to praise him between tears. Those who hesitated were executed the next morning. He would sometimes pause mid-laughter, watching them with quiet fascination, as if testing how much fear a man could endure before his soul broke. But perhaps the darkest transformation was within himself. He began to speak of immortality not as a metaphor, but as a destiny. He declared that death was beneath him, that his blood was divine. He claimed his mother, Agrippina, had been the daughter of gods, that Germanicus had ascended to the heavens, and so, by birthright, so would he. He even began constructing temples dedicated to his own worship, demanding that citizens and nobles alike offer sacrifices to his image. For Caligula, Rome was no longer a state. It was a reflection, a mirror, in which only he existed. The fractured mind, there are stories half legend, half truth of his growing instability. He would hold conversations with statues, whispering to them at night, as if expecting answers. He laughed alone in corridors, and sometimes he would burst into tears during ceremonies without explanation. At times, he was gentle, almost childlike, petting animals, giving gifts to strangers. Moments later, he would order executions over imagined slights. He once said, "Power is knowing that a man's life is the weight of your breath." For Caligula, that was not poetry, it was revelation. The people began to see not a god, but a man unraveling under the weight of his own divinity. Yet none dared speak, not when the guards watched every doorway, not when spies listened in every shadow. To live under Caligula was to breathe, carefully, to think silently, to pray that the emperor's gaze passed over you, unseen. The golden mask cracks years into his rule. Rome had changed. The laughter of the crowds faded. The streets whispered his name in dread. The once bright emperor now appeared pale, restless, his eyes hollowed by visions only he could see. He spoke often of omens of the moon bleeding red, of voices calling from beneath the Tiber River. He believed the gods had grown jealous of his power, that they plotted his downfall, and perhaps they had, because every empire built on fear eventually devours itself. End of part 1. Caligula stood at the height of his supposed divinity, adored by some, despised by most, and feared by all. But in the shadows of the Palatine Hill, blades were being sharpened, and whispers were turning into oaths. The god king of Rome was about to learn that even gods can bleed. By the 4th year of his reign, Caligula no longer ruled Rome, he consumed it. Every law, every ritual, every oath began and ended with his name. The Senate existed only to applaud him. The priests existed only to worship him. And the people, they existed only to feed his hunger for recognition. He had become the son of the empire, and like all sons, he burned everything too close to him. He began to refer to himself not as princeps or emperor, but as Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. He ordered the temples of Rome to merge the statues of Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars with his own likeness, claiming that the gods had chosen to reveal themselves through his body. To oppose him was not treason anymore. It was blasphemy. The living Godin, the grand halls of the Palatine Palace. Marble walls gleamed like ice, reflecting the flicker of golden torches. Caligula would often walk barefoot across the polished floors, his reflection following him like a ghost. He would stop suddenly, gaze into his mirrored image, and murmur, "Am I mortal, or are they simply blind?" He began to stage elaborate rituals, half ceremony, half theater, where he would appear before the Senate dressed as different gods. One day Apollo, the next Mercury, then Venus. Each performance was more extravagant than the last. He spoke to his audience like a divine oracle, prophesying disasters that only his mercy could prevent. Sometimes he demanded silence, sometimes laughter, sometimes both at once. The senators obeyed, their faces pale and fixed, terrified to misread the moment. To please him was survival. To displease him was to vanish. A city on edge beyond the palace. Rome was starving. Caligula's endless construction projects, temples, and festivals had drained the treasury. Taxes rose. Food became scarce. Soldiers went unpaid. But when the people cried out, the emperor only smiled. He summoned the Senate and said, "If the people are hungry, let them feast on their loyalty." To silence the unrest, he organized grand games, gladiatorial combats, races, and public spectacles. The Colosseums filled once again, not with joy, but with desperation. The crowd cheered not because they wanted to, but because they had forgotten how to stop. And yet, within that forced celebration, a quiet hatred grew. The whispering blades among those closest to Caligula were the members of his Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal protectors. They had been chosen for loyalty, for strength, for silence. But even iron bends when the fire is too hot. Their commander, Cassius Chaerea, was a soldier of discipline and pride. Caligula had mocked him often, taunting his voice, calling him weak in front of others. At first, Chaerea endured it, but humiliation, when repeated, becomes poison in the taverns. Whispers began to circulate. If the gods won't end him, perhaps men will. Caligula, oblivious or uncaring, continued to provoke. He trusted no one, yet feared no one. A fatal combination. The ocean of madness in his final months. Caligula's detachment from reality deepened. He spoke of conquering heaven itself, of building a tower that reached the realm of the gods. He claimed to have conversations with the moon. At night, he would ascend to the roof of the palace, speaking to the sky, as if bargaining with unseen forces. Once, he ordered the construction of a massive floating bridge across the Bay of Baiae, several miles of wood and stone laid upon the sea. He paraded across it on horseback, wearing golden armor, declaring that he had defeated Neptune once more. For the people, it was madness. For Caligula, it was proof of divinity. The breaking point, by now. Even his family feared him. His sisters, once adored, now lived as prisoners of luxury. His wife Caesonia whispered prayers in secret. He accused nobles of plotting against him, confiscated their estates, and executed them without trial. The bodies piled up faster than the marble statues built in his honor. Every day, new decrees arrived, stranger, crueler, more erratic. He demanded new temples for himself in every province. He ordered ships to be painted with his image. He renamed months after his family. The empire that had once sung songs of his youth now whispered curses at night. And yet, in his mind, all was well. The last festival, January 41 AD, Caligula announced a new series of games to celebrate his divinity. 40 days of feasts, races, and theatrical performances. The city glittered with banners of gold and crimson. Musicians filled the streets. Dancers performed beneath marble arches. But beneath the noise, something else stirred, a silence heavy with intent. Cassius, Sharia, and a small circle of guards had made their decision. The god of Rome would die by the hands of his own worshippers. The night before the assassination, Caligula held a private dinner. He laughed louder than usual, mocking senators, jesting about the loyalty of his guards. At one point, he raised his cup and said, "Even if I die, I will live again in every corner of Rome. For I am not man, I am Rome itself." Those words, perhaps, sealed his fate. The fall of the living god. The next morning, January 24th, Caligula entered a passageway beneath the Palatine, heading toward the theater where more games were to begin. The air was damp, the corridor lit by the dull glow of torches. Sharia was waiting as the emperor passed. The commander raised his voice in mockery, repeating the insult Caligula had often thrown at him. The emperor turned, half amused, half irritated. That was when the first blow came. The dagger plunged into his neck, then another and another. The air filled with the sharp rhythm of steel meeting flesh. The god of Rome staggered, eyes wide in disbelief. His body fell to the ground, hands clawing for the marble tiles. History does not agree on how many times he was struck. Some say 30, others say more. But when it was over, Gaius Caligula, the divine emperor, lay silent. Aftermath, assassins left him there, bleeding beneath the palace. Outside, the games continued. The crowd roared, unaware that their emperor was already dead. When word reached them, chaos followed. Some rejoiced, others panicked. Soldiers stormed through the streets, killing anyone suspected of involvement. The Senate tried to restore order, even considering abolishing the imperial system altogether. But power never stays vacant for long. Within hours, the Praetorian Guard discovered Caligula's uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain. They dragged him out and hailed him emperor. Rome had buried one god, only to crown another man. The ghost of Caligula. Yet Caligula's death did not end his story. In the weeks that followed, strange tales spread across the empire. Some claimed his spirit walked the halls of the Palatine, whispering to the guards at night. Others said his statue wept blood during storms. A few even believed that he had not died at all, that a god could never truly perish, only transform. Whatever the truth, the legacy of his madness lived on. Rome, forever scarred by his rule, would carry his name like a wound that never healed. Legacy of historians would later argue whether Caligula was truly mad or simply the ultimate mirror of Rome itself, reflecting all its vanity, cruelty, and hunger for power. He was the empire's nightmare made flesh, a man who believed he could command the gods, and for a time, almost did. Even centuries later, his name remains synonymous with excess and insanity. Plays, poems, and whispers would resurrect his ghost time and time again. And in those one truth always lingered, that the line between man and God is thinner than we dare to believe, and once crossed, there is no return. The final reflection in the end. Caligula's greatest crime was not his madness. It was his conviction that the world existed only to worship him. He turned faith into theater, power into art, fear into devotion. And though his empire rotted beneath him, for a fleeting moment, he stood as something greater than mortal, shining with the unbearable light of his own delusion. Then, as quickly as he rose, he vanished, a god slain by his own believers, a man consumed by the mirror he created. Rome would move on, rebuild, and rise again, but deep beneath the marble, beneath the chants of new emperors and the laughter of new crowds, the echo of Caligula remained, a whisper carried by history itself. Beware the man who would be God.